We moved into a house in the country about 4 months ago. Since we had previously lived in an apartment, that means we needed to buy a lawnmower. Instead of putting out $200+ on a lawnmower when we have to move in a few years, we decided to hire somebody to cut our grass. Initially, we went with the guy that my fiance used to work with, but $65 every 2 weeks starts to add up, and I was looking for something cheaper. That brings me to Charles. Charles posted in my Facebook classified that he was looking for some lawns to cut this weekend, and that he had a reputable company. So, I sent him a message. Initially, Charles came off as nice. He asked for my address so he could stop by and give me an estimate. After stopping by my house, he sent me a message saying, "Dang, sweetheart, you got a big porch." It made me kind of uncomfortable, but figured I was overreacting and started planning when he could come out. I told him which days I had off from work, but he assured me that I didn't have to be home. I told him to come Wednesday. Wednesday morning, he messaged me, "Are you home?" I said no. 3 hours later, "Are you home yet?" I told him, "No, I won't be home until after 8. Charles then informed me that his tire had a flat and he could come tomorrow. Thursday, the first thing in the morning, he messaged me, "Will you be home today?" I told him no. He messages back a few hours later, "How about now?" I said, "No, I told you I wouldn't be home all day. Are you still coming out?" He then told me that his truck broke down. He was sending messages like, "Please don't be upset with me, sweetheart." At this point, I was getting really creeped out. I told him to just come tomorrow. Friday, it's actually my off day, but I woke up and I left the house for the day. He messages me, "Hey, I'm coming. You're off today, right?" I said, "Yes, but I'm not home." "When will you be home?" "I don't know." He messaged me later saying, "Sorry, babes, I was loading the equipment onto my truck and it fell and broke. Maybe I can come tomorrow." At this point, I was really creeped out and I told him, never mind, I was gonna find someone else. On Saturday, I get off of work around 4 or 5, and I check my phone and find multiple messages from him saying that he had cut my grass and that I need to come home and give him the money. I told him no, I'll cash app it to you. He started getting really irate and saying that I need to give him the money now. I told him that I would give him the money after I got home, and thought the grass was cut. I was honestly really worried he would be waiting at my house, so I got a friend to drive home behind me. He wasn't there. I sent him the money and I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward 2 months later, I'm on the phone with my fiance as I drive to class, and he tells me that he has to get off the phone because there's somebody walking down our driveway. I asked what he meant, and he said there is a man walking around in our driveway and front yard. After I got to class, he texted me telling me that it was just a man who would come by to promote his lawn care business. I didn't think anything about it, as it had been 2 months. But later that night, I got home and I saw a business card laying on my counter, with the name of the man who had been messaging me earlier. I called my fiance, Mike, at work, and asked how the guy had been acting. He said Charles seemed genuinely surprised that a man had come out, and asked if I lived alone. I asked Mike if the man had stopped at any other houses, and he replied, "Now that I think about it, no. After he left our house, he just left." Mike said he had seemed really desperate to help around the house and offered to cut the lawn, fix our porch, remove any trash or scrap metal that we had around the house, and then asked if we had any pests such as bats in our attic or anything. That especially freaked me out, as we do have a bat problem, and I had previously posted about it on Facebook. Mike then said what was really weird is Charles was very freaked out about the dog. He heard Max barking from inside and started asking a lot of questions like, "Is he big? Does he stay outside or inside? Does he ever go outside or does he stay inside completely? How big is he? Is he nice? Mike chalked it up to him being scared of dogs. He gave him a brief tour of the outside of the house, and then Charles got in his truck and left. I then told Mike that this was the same guy who had been messaging me earlier in the year, and Mike began to freak out. He said that Charles had asked a lot of really specific questions about who all lived here and how long they had lived here, and where they were at the time. He said he tried to brush them off, but Charles seemed really insistent to know if Mike was the only one in the house. Before he left, Mike specifically asked him if he had cut the lawn here before or something, and maybe was thinking of the last owners. But Charles told him, "No, I just happened to be out this way, and thought that I would promote my business to the neighborhood." The worst part, I had taken my fiance's car to work that day, which means that my car was in the driveway when Charles stopped by. He thought that I was home alone. I didn't contact the police because I thought I might be overreacting. This all happened 2 days ago, and I really hope that I never see him again. First off, this story happened almost 10 years ago. I'll jump right in because it's long. I got home from work one day and logged into Facebook to find a message from someone I didn't know. It was too long ago to remember verbatim what was said, but it was along the lines of, "Hey, I know you have no idea who I am, but I've been trying to decide what to do for a few days, and figured I'd let you know what's been going on. Someone has been catfishing me using your identity for over 2 years, and I just found out about it last week." The sender of the message was clearly pretty shaken up and understandably was experiencing a mix of emotions. According to her, she had met the imposter online a little over 2 years ago prior to her writing this, and that they had been engaged in a pretty intimate long-distance relationship for the majority of that time. The imposter had created a Facebook and had over time reposted almost all of my photos with their own captions on them, including a good amount of the art that I had drawn that they took credit for. They created fake profiles for a good amount of my close family and friends, so they could comment on the photos of themselves to make the profile seem legit. The funniest part to me is that, although most things in my real life seem to be mirrored in this fake profile, I, being a straight male, was instead portrayed as a trans. I think the main reason for this was that the sender of the email and the imposter would actually speak on the phone, and the imposter turned out to be female in the end, and therefore needed a reason to justify her more feminine-sounding voice. The sender of the email was justifiably both angry and creeped out and wanted to find the catfish. She started asking me a lot of questions about my life, but phrasing them like, "Is your sister's name blank? And did you go to blank high school?" Some of them were clearly information that anyone could glean from a quick browse of my profile. But then she asked me, "Is your best friend?" Which struck me as odd since despite this person actually being my closest friend, and who I spend the most time with, we have barely any Facebook photos together, and most are from a long time ago. And then she asked, "Were you adopted? And are your half-siblings' names blank and blank?" Which sealed the deal for me since I knew for a fact I had never posted about being adopted online. The sender of the email already had an idea that this person had known me in real life, but this confirmed it for me. The sender of the email had contacted me shortly after confronting the imposter for the first time. I guess after 2 years, they had finally become suspicious of the fact that the imposter wouldn't show their face. I have no idea how it took them this long to figure out that they were being played, but I'm glad they finally decided to give the ultimatum of "show your face or I'm cutting you off." I'm pretty sure this is the point where the imposter admitted to being a catfish, and that she had been using the identity of someone she had a crush on in high school before hanging up. I was given the URL so I could look through the profile myself, which was up for about 2 days after I saw it before it was all removed. It was definitely really bizarre. The imposter had posted more than I ever had on Facebook, and it genuinely seemed like they had lived a pretty involved double life online as me. Almost everyone I had posted photos with on my real profile would then have their own fake profiles created, that had enough content to be genuinely convincing that they could be tagged in and validate these new photos. Some of these profiles seem to have gone and made their own real friends as well. I wonder if any of those were used to facilitate even more online dating deception. Either way, the amount of time that this person had spent fabricating their alter ego's online presence was pretty shocking. The whole time I'd been crawling down this Facebook rabbit hole, the sender of the email was looking through my real profile. After a while, she sent me a message saying, "Did you take these photos?" and showed me what I remember as a black and white photo of a barn or something. I hadn't. Which was weird because everything else on the fake profile originated with me, and she had noticed the discrepancy. We both tried reverse image searching with no luck, and then, either through a stroke of genius or somewhat suspiciously, I really couldn't tell, she thought to flip the fake number the imposter had written into the fake Facebook profile around in reverse, and a Google search came up with a landline that belonged to the home address of a girl that I had gone to high school with. Real me was Facebook friends with real imposter's profile, so we both went snooping around and found the photo that she had claimed I had taken, which pretty much confirmed to me that this was the imposter. I'm pretty sure there were more indicators to the sender as well, but I can't remember. I thought about messaging her for a while, but decided that it probably wouldn't lead to anything good. At the time, my thoughts were definitely, let's not meet. I talked a few times with the sender of the email just to try and decompress a bit, but honestly, I just wanted to distance myself from the situation, and also I had my suspicions about the sender as well. I figured maybe it was the imposter's one last ditch effort to try and talk to me. Although, when it was all over, the sender seemed to be eager to leave all this behind as well, so maybe not. Either way, it was a really strange experience. I felt freaked out and violated, but I guess there is a small part of me that was flattered by it. I had a lot of mixed emotions. The weirdest part to me is that I'm a really approachable person, and I would have definitely been willing to talk and probably be friends if this person had just approached me instead. Although, I'm still not sure if this was done out of an obsession for me, or if this person felt like I was just a suitable image to base this fabricated persona off of. I remember talking to her probably twice throughout high school, and really didn't have a good idea of who she was other than a quiet hipster girl. If either person involved reads this, I'd definitely be happy to talk now. It's been years, but I've gone from being very put off to always wondered why this person chose me over a myriad of other more attractive or interesting people online to base their other life off of. According to the sender who had contacted me, she had probably spent most of her time online pretending to be me than she actually did going about her own life. I have had a tumultuous history of addiction and have had plenty of my own escapes, which is why it's always fascinated me that someone would want to pretend to live someone else's life as a means of doing that. Because at the end of the day, the person pretending to be me had no idea that I spent my time daydreaming of being a different person as well. I guess it just goes to show you that no matter how much you wish you were someone else, chances are that person has plenty of their own reasons to want to escape their own demons, for their own reasons. When I was in my early 20s, I was very mentally unstable. Shout out 6 years since my last psych hospitalization and being the most functional and stable I've ever been in my entire life. I was lonely and desperate for friends. I've struggled with binge eating, and it was particularly bad at the time with a lot of delivery and late night fast food binges. One night that I ordered pizza, this man delivers it. Maybe in his mid to late 30s or early 40s, and I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. We didn't have any very engaging conversation. It was a normal friendly pizza delivery driver conversation. He may have complimented me on my piercings or hair at the time or a shirt. This was a decade ago, so I don't really remember. I do know there was nothing that indicated I wanted to be friends and that it was simply a customer-driver interaction. I think it was a day or so later and he adds me on Facebook. I wanted to emphasize that this was a days later, meaning he took my information home or noted it somewhere. I'm autistic and I have a hard time recognizing faces, especially putting faces to names, and realized that he had found me based off of my order information. Being unstable, lonely, and desperate for friends and also living life by, I made decisions based on whether or not it'll make a good story. I definitely don't do that anymore, and I accepted the friend request. He left some creepy, typical, overly sexual comments on some Facebook photos, but we never met or talked or anything ever again, and I think I deleted him a few months later. I don't remember exactly, but I definitely realized that, okay, this is weird. A delivery driver that was almost twice my age at the time and decided, after less than a 10-minute interaction, to find me on Facebook days later. Let's never meet again, and I hope you don't do this to anyone else. Or if you did, I hope that they were smarter and in a better place than me to get your creepy vibes and decline. I should have reported it to the company, but, hindsight is 20/20. I also want to note that I've had delivery drivers creepily try to flirt with me since, and it's the worst. Please let me eat my greasy food in peace. As a former driver, unless you have a dog, I could always forgive a bad tip if they let me pet their dog. Let's keep this brief, courteous, and remember to tip your drivers. At the start of this year, I, a 34-year-old female, was happily living my life, when I get this odd Facebook request, a girl that I didn't recognize at all. I went to the profile and I noticed that we had like 70 friends in common, but I also noticed that these were friends that would not be common to anybody, in different countries, cities, social circles, so I knew something was up. I also noticed that the profile had been created in 2012, but nothing had been posted since. So I messaged the person. Hey, I don't remember you. Where did we meet? There's no answer for like 2 weeks. At the time, I was feeling really distracted by Facebook and unsettled by this friend request, so I closed it. Around a week later, I get text on my phone telling me to be careful, that someone was speaking badly about me. The next day, a friend calls me up to let me know that a girl has posted a picture of me, saying that I was doing bad things and I was an alcoholic who had many bad things going on, and that I had slept with her boyfriend, that I would sleep with anybody for a bottle of beer. A bunch of my friends were commenting defending me. She replied calling me abusive, saying that I never graduated university, and the usual other insults. And she replies to my message, although my account is closed, the messenger is still active, just calling me out. I also get a message from another account telling me something very bad would happen, and that people were talking crap about me. I proceed to block and report her, and this other account too. Many of my friends reported her profile and post, however, it was not removed. Instead, she closes it on her own. I think because several people started commenting negatively on her post. Time passes, no sign of her. My Facebook is still closed and I'm happy. 1 month ago, she opens the account again. The picture and comments are still there, and starts sending requests to friends of my friends. I am again alerted by this. I report to Facebook. The post stayed up for about 3 days. Some of my friends message her, and she replies telling them that I slept with her boyfriend, sometimes her husband, and that I was deserving of what I would get. A few days later, I get a message from a third account, with fake screenshots of chats she supposedly had with my friends. The message also says that she is threatening to go to my house and hit me. More friends alert me. She is sending them messages asking for information about me, with the usual bad insults and the story about her husband or boyfriend. By this point, she had amassed over 3,000 friends. Additionally, she lets me know that she will be creating a blog about me showing revealing pictures and videos of me which don't exist. Sure enough, a couple of days ago she creates the blog, showing any picture of me that she could find. The screenshots of fake chats with friends, naming random bars where I could be found drinking, and enlisting rock bands that I slept with. She floods all Facebook groups, pages and events in my small city with a link to this blog and the usual insults about me. She also sends the link as a message to every account that she can, I imagine. I guess that after a bunch of people reported the account, it was closed. However, the 2 other accounts continue posting the blog link everywhere they can. I also received text messages asking me to get rid of myself and letting me know that this is not even the beginning. I have no idea how to make this stop, and I'm somewhat afraid if this person decides to move from the online world to the real world. I have no idea who this is. The behavior that she describes is fake and it doesn't really make sense. I just really wish this person would leave me alone on Facebook and in my real life. Dear random person, may we never meet again. This all happened when I was 19. I'm not the best looking dude, so I never had much luck with women, and I ended up on Tinder. I wasn't having much luck there either until like the 3rd month of using it. One day, a blonde woman named Katie messaged me. She was pretty enough, and I just dismissed her as a bot. It wasn't until 3 days later that she messaged me again, which was odd because bots almost never message more than once. I clicked on her chats and replied, and then I looked at her profile. What I saw was pretty generic, but definitely wasn't a bot's profile. We had been talking for like a month when she had proposed the idea that I come see her. I was pretty reluctant, as she did live like 8 hours away from me by car, but I had to admit, I really did like her quite a bit, and I had been thinking about asking her if I could see her for a while now. After a bit more badgering from her, I finally said that I would take the drive to go see her. At this point, I had no reason to doubt she was who she said she was. We had video chatted every other week, and called most days, so I just assumed that I got really lucky. Things did get a little weird on the way there though. She kept messaging me, asking me where I was, and making sure that I was still coming. At some point, when I took more than 30 minutes to respond, she sent a slew of annoyed texts. Admittedly, I chalked all of this up to her being nervous about me coming to see her. I was pretty nervous too, so I couldn't blame her. I had a hard time finding a house at first. The directions she gave me were pretty confusing, and it was back through a series of gravel and dirt roads and a large thicket of trees. It was still about midday when I came onto an old-looking house. A window on the 2nd floor was boarded up, but it didn't look abandoned, just worse for wear. Katie's red buggy that she liked to talk about was parked in front of the garage. I took out my phone and I texted her that I was here. She only sent a smiley face in return. When I got out of my car to go knock on the door, I noticed someone was looking at me from one of these 2nd floor windows. I found it a little creepy, but I figured it was just her father or something. She had told me that he comes to stay with her every now and again, so I ignored it and I knocked on her door. She answered with a smile and even gave me a kiss, which surprised me, and I followed her inside. We sat down on her couch and started talking about our plans when I asked her about her dad. "You didn't tell me your dad was here," I said. "Was that going to be a surprise or?" Katie looked confused and told me that her dad wasn't here. I still thought she was keeping up the act, and I told her that she didn't have to keep pretending, and that I did see him looking at me through the upstairs window. Katie went pale and said that we had to get out of there now. We both ran out to our cars, and when I questioned Katie, she informed me that her dad wasn't there, and that she had been home alone until I showed up. I called the police, and while I was on the phone giving the address, Katie gasped and pointed to the window where I had seen the guy last. He was looking at us from out the window again. I got a better look at him, and he seemed older and frail, almost like he hadn't eaten anything in a while. He left the window after he saw that we saw him. The police took half an hour to show up, and the whole time Katie was crying and mumbling about how she was an idiot for not keeping her doors locked. When the police finally did show up, one started asking me and Katie questions and the other to search the house. They came back out a little later and told me and Katie that, while they didn't find anyone, they did find that the back door was hanging open. Whoever it was had ran out into the woods, but the cops are sure that the house was empty. After the cops left, Katie asked me to stay the night, because she was too scared to be in her house alone right now. I gladly did, and we slept downstairs on the couch, as Katie's bed was the room next to the one that the man had been in. Katie also brought out the shotgun that her father had given her, but she never used. I told her it was fine. The man's gone, but she insisted, saying that she would feel safer if we had it out. I'm glad she did. Later that night, I was still wide awake watching TV. Katie had somehow managed to fall asleep. From the kitchen, I had the sound of a doorknob being turned. At that point, I wasn't even scared, I was just upset. I flipped on the light in the kitchen and pointed the gun at the kitchen door. And there he was. The guy that had been in the house before was standing on the other side of the glass door. He looked shocked, and I'm glad that we had locked the door. The man unfroze and yet again ran into the woods. I woke up Katie and I told her what had happened, and we called the police yet again. When they arrived, they did a sweep of the woods and found no one yet again. They told Katie and me that it would probably be a good idea to stay somewhere else for the night. Katie and I said our goodbyes. She was going to stay at her friend's house and I was going home. I left a little after Katie did. I was on the phone with my brother telling him about what had happened. My headlights were on. As I was talking, someone caught my eye. That man was standing in the corner of the house just watching me. I gunned it out of there and didn't even bother calling the police again. But I did text Katie and she said that she was going to call them again. I don't think Katie ever even went back to that house alone. This happened to me my freshman year of college. Tinder was new at the time and everyone at my university was on the app. I joined to see what all the fuss was about. Looking through profiles, I found a few guys that were really interesting, and this one guy in particular caught my eye. We'll call him Walter. I swiped right on Walter and we matched. I was excited and kind of giddy because he was super attractive. He messages me and I got butterflies in my stomach. We messaged on the app for maybe an hour. A typical conversation is happening. I asked him what he did for a living. He asked what my major was. Harmless conversation. After a while, he asked for my phone number, so we could text instead of message on this app. I gave it to him. He seemed nice enough. We messaged back and forth for a few days. Lots of flirty conversation and plans to hang out finally occurred. By the fourth day of the conversation, he started calling me babe, which gave me mixed feelings. It was cute but also a little weird. We didn't really even know each other and we had never met. But I ignored it and I continued on with the conversation. He started saying that he wanted to be exclusive and he really wanted to see me in person. He was begging me at this point to come to his apartment to cuddle and watch movies with him and his dog. I told him that our first meet needed to be in public. I would not be going to some stranger's apartment. He said that I was overreacting and kept begging. I ignored him for the rest of the night. The next day, he apologized and said that he understood we needed to meet in public, so we made plans that weekend. The weekend came faster than I expected, and it was the day that we were supposed to meet. Something just felt off and I decided to back out. I texted him apologizing, saying that my mom wasn't feeling well and that it needed me to come home to help her with some house chores. This made him annoyed, and he said, "Your mom is a big girl. If she needs you, she can call you. Just come over and you can leave whenever you go to help her. I really want to see and kiss you." I told him no, that I would be staying with my mom that weekend, and that was that. I only lived about 30 minutes from home, so I actually did go home to see my mom that day. After what he said about my mom, I started ignoring him, and then texts started rolling in. Text after text. "Babe, I'm sorry, please come over. "Babe, I miss you. Are you going to come over?" I planned on replying the next day that I was just busy with my mom. But then he started calling me. I had a total of 45 missed phone calls within a 2-hour period. He left voicemails saying that he was sorry and that he just missed me and wanted me to call him back. Similar voicemails continued almost the entire time that I was home. My roommate texted me shortly after I finished dinner with my mom and asked if we could go out that night. I agreed and I went back to my university dorm. Suddenly the calls from Walter started to increase again. More texts, voicemails, and he started messaging me again on Tinder, asking why I wasn't replying to him. I wasn't planning on replying until I got a message on Instagram that said, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming back to town tonight?" Getting this message really freaked me out. I replied to him and said, "Sorry, I've been busy with my mom. How did you know I was back in town?" He said, "Well, I checked your Tinder, of course. Tinder doesn't tell exact locations but has a within 1 mile message." This really freaked me out, and I messaged him back and said that he was being really creepy. He seriously had been constantly refreshing my profile to see the distance change. The messages, calls, and voicemails continued. All were him now apologizing for making me feel weird about him knowing where I was. He was just worried about me. We had been texting for less than a full week. I told my roommate about it, so we decided to stay in that night. The last straw for me was getting a message saying, "Look, I'm really sorry. I'm outside your dorm with flowers and chocolates. Please forgive me." Oh, heck no. I called campus security and told them about this guy, and they never found anyone waiting outside any of the doors. I'm assuming he was in his car waiting for me to reply. I blocked him on all socials, his phone number, deleted Tinder, and have never been back on since. I've seen him once out and about in town, but he never recognized me, thankfully. Walter, if you read this, I'm glad we never met. Thanks for making me second guess every single guy that I find attractive. I was 20 at the time and single and ready to mingle. I was studying at a school about 28 minutes away from my house, and of course I was on Tinder. Now, I've dated some older men. I'm attracted to them, so my setting on Tinder for males was always ages 25 to 40. I swiped right on a guy who looked decent enough, and he was 36. We match and he begins to message me. We go through a day or two of messaging. I explain that I'm really just looking for a friend with benefits, and he had his own apartment, about a 2-minute walk from my school. Perfect. We add each other on Snapchat and Instagram, and once he takes a look through all my photos, his way of messaging becomes strange. He starts to message me stuff on Snapchat like, "You're so beautiful. I want to hold you in my arms. You're like an angel." Now mind you, we have never met. Once he starts messaging me like this, I realize that he's not my type, especially in a friend with benefits situation. I don't need someone like that. I start to leave him on red and I ignore his messages. The next weekend, I was going to a wedding. I was all dressed up and of course I posted a few pictures to my story, which he immediately started commenting on like, "Oh my god, you're beautiful. I miss your touch. I want to feel you in my arms." I ignore him and I have a good time at the wedding. And right before the wedding started, I popped an edible. By the time I got home, it was midnight and I was very, very high and very, very sleepy. I had worked earlier that day and I had a nap in between. I get into bed and I start to go through my phone. I live with my family and everyone else was asleep. I start getting messages from this guy again, and I'm so high and tired that I start reading them, giving brief responses saying, "Aw, thanks." And then he messages me saying, "I think I'm gonna come to blank tonight." Blank space is the city where I live, 30 minutes away from his apartment. I respond by saying, "That's weird, don't do that," obviously thinking that he was joking. And then he says, "I want to breathe the same air as you. I want to feel you. I want to breathe with you." I begin to freak out and then he starts messaging me, "Be there soon, babe." I'm like super scared now because I live with my family and I didn't want anything weird happening. And then all of a sudden, I remember that my Snap map has location on it. I go into my map and I see my little Bitmoji and her cute outfit sitting at my house. I quickly turn myself into ghost mode. And then I see his little Bitmoji, and it's getting closer and closer to my city. I somehow convince myself that he's not joking. He's probably on his way to another city near mine, but he's getting closer and closer. It's 1:30 in the morning now. For the first time in years, I begin to pray. 10 minutes later, I check the Snap map again. Now even if you are in ghost mode, you can see if you are sharing locations with someone, although the other person can't. When I looked at my map, I was sharing locations with him. He was right outside my house. I looked out of my window and there is a car with its lights on. At this point, I'm so freaked out that my heart is inside my throat. My anxiety is through the roof, and I'm still high. I end up passing out and then falling asleep. I wake up in the morning scared. I check my phone. He had sent a few messages saying, "You have a beautiful street, baby, a beautiful home. Have a good night." I go into my mom's room to ensure that nothing had happened and she was fine. I later went to work, and after work, I went to the police station and I spoke to them. They said they couldn't do anything unless he tried to come over again, and that's when I could call the police. I went home and for a few days I got no messages, and then at 5 a.m. on the following Tuesday, I got a message. "Even though I drove all the way to your home to breathe the same air as you, you have still not messaged me. I'm not as desperate as I seem. If you ever want what I got, let me know." Since then, I've heard from him once or twice, but I eventually blocked him. I didn't block him from the start because he knew where my house was. I was scared that if he couldn't get a hold of me, he would show up. So, creepy rando who showed up at my house in the middle of the night. Let's not meet. This story all happened in the last 3 weeks, and the final part hopefully just took place this morning. So to set the stage, I'm a single dad with a daughter who is about to turn 3. I don't really have time to go out and meet people, but I decided that I needed to put myself out there, so I made a Tinder profile. I had a few decent dates, but nothing too special. And then about 3 weeks ago, I matched with a new person. She lived about 30 minutes from me and looked cute, so I messaged her. We started talking, and she gave me her number. We texted for a week or so and things seemed great. We both seemed to be on the same page about things, and that neither one of us wanted to rush into anything serious, but having a friend with benefits would be nice. So, we decided to spend an evening together. The first evening went well, and we got along great. We did the same thing a few days later, and again, everything went fine. But after about 2 weeks, it became clear that she wanted to start an actual relationship, and I wasn't ready to commit to that. I made that clear and she seemed to understand and accept it. After some of the things that she said though, I was seeing some little red flags. I wasn't sure if she was going to actually respect my wishes, and not try to move things forward into a serious relationship. And there were a number of things she said that made me think she was a bit emotionally unstable. So I decided to take a few days to think about things and decide what I wanted to do. We had been texting at least a little bit every day, and I felt like the daily contact was not helping to convince her that I was serious when I said that I wanted to take things slow and not jump into a relationship. So on a Friday morning I was texting her, and then just kind of stopped replying. I didn't think much about it since I was really busy anyway. She came to my house that night, just showed up unannounced. I was polite and made an excuse about my phone being broken. She claimed that she showed up because she was worried something had happened to me, since I had always replied right away before. But her showing up at my house was another huge red flag. I figured the broken phone excuse would benefit me, giving me time to evaluate this new warning sign and decide what to do. I told her I was fine, but that I would be MIA for a bit until I got a new phone. I don't have a home internet connection either, so basically all contact with me would cease until I reinitiated. She seemed to be fine, apologizing for intruding on my evening, and left right away, so I didn't give it much thought, other than it reaffirming my concern that she was becoming obsessed. In the next few days, she sent a few messages basically just checking to see if I got a new phone. There was nothing too crazy, but it was still very worrying. And with everything else, it told me that I needed to cut things off completely. That leads me to last night. It was 6 days since she had showed up at my house and I hadn't contacted her so far. I was hoping that my silence would send a message, or that maybe she would have forgotten about me and moved on to someone else. But 'twas not to be. I went to sleep around 12 a.m. and woke up at 6. Upon looking at my phone, I saw literally like 15 message notifications, 6 missed calls, and a voicemail. The text started off saying, "I know you're probably asleep, but I saw that you accepted a friend on Facebook 2 days ago, so I wanted to know why you'd been ignoring me," and then went to pleading with me to answer the phone, and finished with, "If you won't talk to me, I'm going to come to your house." This whole thing took place between 1 and 2 a.m. The voicemail was just her sobbing into the phone and screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" Keep in mind, I've known this girl for less than a month, and we've only been on 2 dates in that time. At this point, I was pretty freaked out, so I called a friend of mine asking for advice. My friend told me to just be blunt, and tell her that threatening to come to my house in the middle of the night was completely inappropriate, that she's acting crazy and not to contact me again. So, here I am this morning after sending her a long text, kindly but firmly telling her that her behavior wasn't acceptable, and that she was not to contact me again. So, crazy Tinder girl, let's not meet.